He's just the driver. Let him wait by the truck. The words bounced off the armored walls of the command vehicle like rubber bullets, careless, blunt, and completely dismissive. Lieutenant Jason Keats didn't even glance at the man behind the wheel as he stepped down. The others followed, brushing past the older man with the silent assumption he was irrelevant, disposable, unimportant. No one asked his name. No one noticed the deep scar beneath his left eye or the small pin, faded with time, on the inside of his jacket collar. It was a combat badge, the kind earned in operations so buried in secrecy that even most generals never knew the details. But Harold Hal Granger didn't care. Not anymore. At 68 years old, Hal had seen the cycle too many times. Boys with ranks and tempers, barking orders without understanding what true chaos looked like. The kind of chaos where plans turned to ash, where training didn't matter, and where survival depended on instinct and the ability to act when everyone else froze. The convoy was parked in a remote stretch of Badlands, part of a routine escort for diplomatic cargo. Routine was a cursed word, Hal thought. He'd buried too many friends during routine operations. He stayed in the driver's seat, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes flicking between the mirrors. It was the same stillness he had practiced for years, like a statue carved by fire and memory. Outside, the officers set up a perimeter, casually chatting. They weren't green, but they weren't seasoned either. One of them laughed, kicking a piece of gravel. "We should have gotten someone younger to drive. This guy looks like he's from Desert Storm." Hal smirked. Wrong war, he thought. Wrong continent, too. Then the wind shifted. A faint shimmer, like heat off asphalt, danced on the ridge a few hundred meters to the north. Hal's fingers twitched. Something was off. He leaned forward slightly, one eye narrowed, scanning the ridge. There, a glint. Too clean, not natural. His heart slowed. Muscles didn't tense. They coiled, like memory returning to the body. He opened the truck door and stepped down, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. No one paid attention. "Sir," he said calmly, approaching Lieutenant Keats, "you'll want to call your team back to the vehicles now." Keats blinked, irritated. "What?" "I said," Hal's voice hardened, "get your men behind cover. We're about to have company." Laughter. One of the younger soldiers rolled his eyes. "You smell ghosts in the wind, Grandpa?" Hal didn't respond. He simply turned his head and ran toward the nearest vehicle. Then the ridge exploded. A burst of dirt, flame, and shrapnel rained down like a hammer from the sky. Screams, dust, the thunder of automatic fire from unseen angles. Keats hit the ground hard, pulling his sidearm. "What the hell?" Hal had already thrown himself behind the wheel, turned the key, and rammed the truck sideways to create instant cover. The armored hull took 3 bullets before anyone else could blink. He slammed open the passenger door. Get in or die standing. Chaos. Soldiers scattered. Hal reached for the hidden comm panel behind the dash, a custom rig only he knew about, and activated the jammer. Enemy signals fizzled. Outside, Keats looked stunned, crawling toward the vehicle. The old driver was shouting coordinates, giving orders with the precision of a field commander. And finally someone asked, "Who is this guy?" Smoke coiled through the air like serpents, wrapping the convoy in a curtain of confusion. The first explosion had triggered a chain reaction. Comms were down, a second Humvee had been hit by an RPG, and 2 soldiers were bleeding behind a wheel that no longer turned. In the middle of it all, Harold Hal Granger moved like a ghost through the fire. From the passenger seat, Keats watched as Hal adjusted the mirror with a flick, not to check his reflection, but to get eyes on the northwest ridge. He barked into the comm, not the standard set, but the encrypted one hidden beneath the console, a frequency only a select few in special operations ever knew. Falcon 6, this is Ghost 1. Active engagement. Ghost coordinates incoming. That name hadn't responded through the airwaves in over a decade, not since Hal had vanished off the books. Who gave you that comm link? Keats demanded. Hal didn't answer. Instead, he turned, locked eyes with the young officer, and spoke in a voice that vibrated with quiet authority. Right now, son, the enemy doesn't care about your chain of command. And if you don't start listening, neither will the Reaper. Keats blinked. For the first time since the ambush started, he hesitated. And that hesitation saved him. Because a second later, a sniper's bullet pierced the air right where his head had been. Hal's hand was already moving, signaling a flanking route with 2 fingers. Get your 3 best shooters. Follow the creek bed east. There's a rock outcrop. They're using it for cover. You flank it. I'll draw fire. You'll what? You're just the... I was Ghost 1 for 12 years, Hal snapped. And I've buried men who move slower than you're thinking. With that, he was gone, charging toward the Humvee with the damaged gun mount. The enemy must have thought the convoy too stunned to react. They hadn't counted on a ghost stepping out of the past. As bullets ricocheted around him, Hal dove behind the vehicle, grabbed the spare ammo belt, and slammed it into the side-mounted M240. He'd done this in 100 countries under 100 different flags, and muscle memory did the rest. The machine gun roared to life. For the first time since the attack began, the insurgents paused. They hadn't expected return fire, not coordinated, not precise, and certainly not from the convoy's driver. Meanwhile, Keats, now trembling but focused, led 3 men east, just like Hal said. The creek bed was low and slick, but the old man had been right. The enemy sniper was using a camouflage net near the outcrop. Keats's men neutralized him in seconds. The flank worked. The momentum shifted. Hal never stopped firing. When the M240 jammed, he flipped it, cleared the chamber with 2 hard slaps, and let it sing again. His arms ached, eyes burned, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Then, silence. Not peace, the kind of silence that hangs when all the bullets are gone and only the heavy breathing of survivors remains. Hal stepped away from the smoking barrel. His jacket was torn, face covered in dust and blood. Not his own. Keats approached slowly. You saved the convoy. Hal didn't speak, just turned his head slightly, scanning the horizon. Always scanning. I need to know, Keats said. Who are you? Hal looked him dead in the eye. I'm just the driver. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the smoldering battlefield. Medics moved quickly now, triaging the wounded, while engineers worked to assess the damage to the remaining vehicles. The enemy had been repelled, but everyone knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Keats stood beside Hal as the radio crackled. This is Falcon 6. Ghost 1, confirm your status. Hal pressed the mic. Ghost 1 active. Convoy compromised but intact. Enemy force scattered. Send evac birds to grid 7 Delta. A pause. Copy that, Ghost 1. Extraction inbound. Confirming. Your ID is still active. Welcome back. Keats's head turned sharply. Still active? Hal didn't answer. He just started walking toward the rear Humvee, where a long metal case had somehow remained untouched amidst the chaos. He opened it. Inside lay a compact tactical kit, military-grade gear that hadn't been issued in years, a silenced carbine, old night vision goggles, and a badge. Not just any badge, a dark silver emblem with a phoenix crest etched in shadow. "What is that?" Keats whispered. "It's what I carried before I had a name you could pronounce," Hal said softly. Ghost One wasn't just a code name. It was a mission. Around them, the surviving soldiers watched in awe. The same man they had ignored, mocked even, was now the epicenter of calm in a post-ambush world. Every move he made, every decision, seemed born from some deep vault of experience none of them could reach. Sergeant Linton, who had doubted Hal the most, finally spoke up. "Sir, we owe you our lives." Hal shook his head. "Don't call me sir. I don't wear the bars anymore. But you lead like you do." Hal turned to Keats. "You've got good instincts, but you've been trained in the art of order. There's another kind of training, one born in the dark." Keats swallowed. "Teach me." Hal's eyes narrowed. For a moment his expression softened. "The first rule of staying alive, don't assume the war's over just because the guns go quiet." Suddenly Hal stopped. He knelt beside one of the injured soldiers, a young private groaning in pain. "Shrapnel," the medic said. "We stopped the bleeding, but he needs an evac." Hal took the soldier's hand. "Hold on, kid. You made it through the worst of it. The rest is just waiting." It was then that a quiet realization spread through the unit. Hal wasn't just a ghost from a forgotten past. He was a reminder of what survival meant, of the line between hesitation and instinct, between following and leading. Later that evening, while they waited for evac choppers to arrive, Keats approached Hal once more. "You're not staying with us, are you?" Hal lit a cigarette, stared into the horizon. "No, ghosts don't linger." "But where will you go?" Hal gave him the faintest of smiles. Where I'm needed." And just like that, Hal turned and walked away, not into the sunset, but into the shadows it cast. The whir of helicopter blades grew louder in the distance, slicing through the thick desert air. As the dust picked up, soldiers instinctively shielded their eyes, while medics prepared stretchers for the wounded. But Hal didn't flinch. He stood at the edge of the encampment, his eyes fixed on the horizon, not the choppers. No, his gaze went beyond. Something in his posture was off. Keats noticed first. "You see something?" he asked. Hal didn't reply immediately. His jaw tightened. Someone's coming, not evac. The entire unit tensed. Sergeant Linton pulled out his binoculars. One vehicle, no markings, fast. Hal grabbed his old gear from the case he'd opened earlier. In seconds, he had the carbine slung, vest strapped, and goggles clipped to his belt. The transformation was eerie. The janitor was gone. In his place stood a specter of war. The approaching vehicle screeched to a halt roughly 150 meters away. From the passenger side, a hooded figure stepped out, holding something in their hand. It glinted in the fading sunlight. A white flag, but Hal didn't move. "Trap?" Keats asked. "Always," Hal replied. And then, boom! A hidden mine exploded 5 feet in front of the vehicle, triggered remotely. The man with the flag was thrown backward, limp. Chaos erupted. "Positions!" Linton shouted. The remaining squad dove behind sandbags, readying their weapons. But Hal walked straight ahead. "Hal!" Keats shouted. "Are you insane?" Hal kept walking. "I've seen this tactic before," he murmured, mostly to himself. "Same playbook, same bait." Gunfire erupted from the dunes to the east, a flanking ambush. But Hal was already diving for cover, faster than anyone expected. He raised his carbine and, with frightening precision, dropped two shooters before they even found their mark. Keats watched in awe. Every movement was fluid, clean, deadly. By the time the unit regrouped and pushed forward, the fight was almost over. A dozen enemies lay disabled or captured. No friendly casualties. Not one. Hal stood over the man who had held the white flag. He was still alive, barely. "Why?" Hal asked. The man coughed blood, looked up. "You, Ghost One." Hal's blood ran cold. This wasn't random. They knew who he was. "They sent you," Hal whispered. Back at the camp, the evac helicopters finally landed. Medics rushed out, assisting the wounded. But now all eyes were on Hal. Keats approached. "What was that about? Who was that guy?" Hal didn't answer directly. Instead, he handed Keats a flash drive taken from the man's pocket. "Encrypted," he said. "It needs to get to someone who still has clearance." "You don't?" Hal gave a sad smile. "I burned my bridges, but I know how to swim." Keats looked at the flash drive, then back at Hal. "You think this is bigger than just an ambush?" Hal nodded. "They weren't after us. They were after me." By the time the convoy returned to base, the sun was setting. The chaos of the day had faded, replaced by an uneasy calm. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy with unanswered questions. Hal said nothing. The soldiers whispered about him, trying to piece together who he really was. Yet Hal acted as if the day had been just another shift. He went back to cleaning the vehicles. The same quiet janitor. Only Keats kept a close eye. That night, the base commander requested Hal's presence personally. Hal entered the room. The commander stood facing the window. On the desk behind him, a screen showed classified files. Photos of a younger Hal, war footage, operational logs. "Ghost One," the commander said without turning. "Still watching over us, huh?" Hal didn't reply. He just gave a slow nod. "We decrypted the flash drive, active mission intel, but they were targeting you. Why now?" Hal took a long breath. "They thought I was no longer a threat. That's when people get sloppy." "They were wrong," the commander replied. That night, Hal was offered reinstatement, full clearance, uniform, command. He declined. "I don't fight anymore," he said. "I observe, and when needed, I remind." The commander handed him a folder. "Your past, maybe your future. Do what you think is right." The next morning, Hal rose early. Before anyone else was awake, he strolled past the convoy. He paused by the armored lead vehicle, staring at it for a long moment. Then he picked up his mop and turned toward the hangar. But that day, everyone looked at him differently, with respect, with wonder, in silence. Keats walked up beside him and whispered, "You'll tell me about that tattoo someday." Hal smiled. "Maybe one day." Then he turned and disappeared into the hangar's shadows. But they all knew he wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was the silent commander.